You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is August 25th, 2020, and we are beaming to you from the Rocket City in Huntsville, Alabama. Today we're going to have Michael Huntington on the show. He is a paranormal travel writer, blogger, and UFO researcher from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He has investigated the unusual since the late 70s. He has traveled to hundreds of places in the U.S. with his family, documenting strange locations and lost lore. He has been a guest on dozens of paranormal and UFO-related radio programs, has appeared on television discussing UFOs, and has been interviewed for several documentaries, including the cryptid feature, Momo, the Missouri Monster, and On the Trail of UFOs, documentary series produced by Small Town Monsters. Michael's work can be found on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the Strange Travels blog, and in soon-to-be-released Strange Travel book series. So, let's just get right to it. We'll be right back with Michael Huntington right after this. Well, welcome back to Conflict Radio. We are with Michael Huntington. He's a paranormal travel writer. Michael, how are you today?
Pretty good, Michael. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to get somebody on who has actually been out in the field doing actual research and checking out these sites around the world. What kind of sites do you travel to?
Well, I don't really travel throughout the world. We haven't gotten, outside of the country. We spend a lot of our time traveling around the Midwest, places where you can get to in a car within a few days. We hope to kick it up a notch here in a few years, get an RV and take some longer trips. And basically what we do is, we go on vacations, and my wife Diane and my boys Robbie, who's 10, and Sammy, who's 8. We've been doing this about 4 years, going out to different places, phenomenological places, unusual spots, haunted houses, UFO encounter sites or landing spots, Bigfoot sighting locations, anything sort of interesting, weird urban legend, folklore type stuff, spook lights, all that good stuff. We stop along and we try to document and photograph and explore places and visit places, as many of these types of places as we can as we take our vacations, and been doing it about 4 years now.
And so in 4 years, how many places do you think you've been to?
I'd probably say like maybe 500.
That's a lot of places.
Or more. I want to say more. Just based on, a lot of the blog posts that I've done, thousands of them, a lot of them with pictures of our travels and little stories about cool places. I got thousands of those, so certainly, it's a lot of UFO spots, a lot of haunted houses, haunted cemeteries, ghost roads, spook light roads, crybaby bridges. Every town's got those, but pretty much anywhere you go, small town, big city, you're going to have these sort of places, which we like to document and explore.
So whose idea was this to do this? Was this your idea, or how did you present this to your family, or was it even your idea to present?
Well, I have always been into, UFOs and, other strangeness, since I was a kid. I grew up in the culture of the 70s where, that sort of stuff just permeated the culture, National Enquirer magazines and Weekly World News and, Project UFO on TV and Search of on TV, Close Encounters at the theater. And then, during that whole period, there was just a lot of UFO, ancient astronauts sort of stuff in the culture. So I've always been into that. And, when I went to school at SEMO, Southeast Missouri State, I studied philosophy of science, which deals with, a lot of the pseudoscientific questions that relate to all of these different paranormal spheres. So my wife knew that I was, a weirdo. Mm-hmm. That I've had, an interest in all this stuff. And probably about 5 years ago, I started a little Google Maps project, to get my chops going with a lot of the stories and locations. I started pinpointing spots on Google Maps, of anomalous places, interesting, places, bucket list type stuff that I've, wanted to see and visit. On our trips, so I started doing that, and probably a year solid of putting 1,000 pinpoints in a map of the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. I said to my wife, I was like, I'd like to start visiting some of these places, so we started locally, visited all the spots around here and there, and went over to places in southern Illinois. I'm in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm a couple hours south of St. Louis, right on the Mississippi River. I got Illinois on the other side, and southeast Missouri and Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee. That whole area is sort of I have access to. So that's where we travel a lot. But within that area, you got like Marley Woods, and you got, you got spook light phenomena, you got mud monsters, in Murfreesboro, you got the Blair Witch, or the Bell Witch, Kelly Hopkinsville goblins, and the Piedmont UFO wave, 1973. There's just, tons of different interesting locations, and we try to travel to as many of those as we can and document as best we can. And basically, I do this. My field research is a tool to better understand a case. By going to a location and being there in the space, gives you a better understanding. I think if you can figure a case down to the foot, where people were standing and what angles and all that stuff. I think that that demonstrates that you have a good knowledge of a case. So I figured
your kids,
that's the best way to do it.
Your kids have fun doing it.
Yeah, we go to a lot of conferences and festivals. So we'll go to like the Kelly Little Green Man Festival that they have every year. Mothman Festival, UFO conferences, ghost hunts, professional ones, different things, and we'll visit places that'll have, stuff that's interesting to them, like Huntsville has, Space Camp. Yeah. While I was at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies conference that they held there, my kids got to play in that Space Camp, so that just worked out good. I got to do my UFO nerd stuff, and they had some cool places to check out. So usually that's the way it works. As long as the hotel has a swimming pool, they're good to hit the road.
Yeah. So it's not just UFO places you visit; it's all kinds of paranormal.
Yeah, it's anything interesting, roadside travel type stuff as well. I'll totally stop and take a picture of a big ball of yarn, or
Yeah, you mentioned that you were in Huntsville, Alabama. There's a dead children's playground there. Did you go to that?
Yes, we did. We were lucky enough to go there.
Can you tell the listeners, I guess, the story of that place?
Well, like most haunted cemeteries or graveyards or school grounds, it's a sort of a merging of the two. You're going to have, some sort of tragic burial coupled with, some sort of abuse or whatever. Basically, it's a section of a cemetery there, and I forget which cemetery. I'll have to look that up. If I can give the exact name, it would probably be good. But yeah, usually when we take a trip, we'll do heavy research, go there, and try to get as much as we can in there. But yeah, the story is that there was a section of the cemetery that was either had children buried in it, or it was designed to keep children occupied during like funeral services or whatever. So it might have been both, but it had a long tradition of that. And typical playground type story is that children haunt the grounds. Children that were either buried nearby there, or it's a flashback to some previous time, or there's something strange about that section. It's up against almost like a quarry wall, so you can kind of climb walls behind it, and it's kind of like also down at like a little pit, and it's got swings and all that stuff. But typical playground ghost rise in this. People reporting a little kid being seen, a boy, sometimes a girl, swinging on the playground, and then they're not there, or swings moving by themselves, that sort of stuff, or kids' laughter heard, or children playing with, my kids were playing with, a kid, and then the kid disappearing. Not my kids, but
yeah.
That's how the story goes. But yeah, we did go there. We visited. I took my boys. It was last year. I think, yeah, it was last year. And yeah, no, there was a kid already there playing. He just came up, a little boy. He didn't look too spectral or anything. It was kind of weird. He was just sort of really into our business all of a sudden, out of nowhere. And so my boys, went and played with him. And, while they were playing, we definitely did see, swings sort of moving on their own. Now, phenomenologically, what the cause of that would be, I didn't see any evidence of anything, spectral with that. It could have been some sort of vibration, wind, who knows? Like I said, it's sort of like in a cutaway cliff sort of area, so it's definitely got some strange wind currents, I'm sure. But it's got that creepy vibe that that Children of the Corn, sort of come play with us, Stephen King thing with it, if you know the story, and yeah, it's Maple Hill Park is the one that we're talking about.
Yeah, and Maple Hill Cemetery, yeah.
Yeah, the cemetery. It's the Dead Children's Playground in Maple Hill Park. Yeah, the cemetery, which it's a pretty cool cemetery. It's I think there was a lot of burials, maybe in like the 20s or whatever. I think that Huntsville probably started to thrive after the 20s, and certainly, when the space program happened, it was definitely thriving in the 50s and 60s. That's where Operation Paperclip dumped all its Nazis, So interesting town there. But no, the back to the Dead Children's Playground. Yeah, it was definitely creepy. The only weird thing that we did experience was I called my boys over, because we were getting ready to leave, and they were running down this path area. And my first boy, Robbie, tripped at a certain point, he didn't trip over any root or anything. There was no obstacle, but he tripped and just fell flat. And got himself up and went to the car. And then Sammy, the younger one, the redheaded one, is coming down. He trips at the exact same spot, the exact same way, which I thought was unusual. I thought it was interesting and, coincidental, certainly.
Maple Hill Cemetery has a cow buried there too, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's supposed to be some famous cow, I think, that produced like the world's record for amount of butter or something. I'm not really sure the whole story.
Really?
But, there's.
Yeah, I've been to a few cemeteries, so I'll run across the occasional celebrity, like Colonel Sanders. I saw his grave in Louisville. It's actually buried in the same cemetery as Muhammad Ali, which is kind of interesting too. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we'll put the celebrity grave in, definitely, if we can. I don't take the boys and to like haunted places at night or cemetery places at night.
So have you ever been to
super murdery spots? I just don't want them to be around that. But everything else is fair game.
Have you ever been to a place where your kids were just like, yeah, no, we want to get out of here?
Yeah, probably some of the haunted hotels. We go to Eureka Springs every year. It's down in Arkansas. The Ozark Mountain UFO conference is down there every year. It's probably the better UFO conference, traditional UFO conference in the Midwest. Us here in the Midwest are sort of limited into some of these UFO venues that we can go to because everything's out in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, and it's all big productions, and it costs money to fly to these places and get a Vegas hotel room, and all that sort of stuff, renting cars. So I try to stay closer to somewhere that I could drive. So we usually go to that conference. I think that's one of the better ones. And then the SCU conference now too in Huntsville. I think they're going to start doing those. Once we get past coronavirus and all that, I think they're going to start doing some interesting stuff down there. So.
Yeah, Huntsville's got a lot of interesting stuff going on. Every time you turn around, there's a conference or something going on here.
Well, Huntsville now has Rich Hoffman, of course, SCU, one of the founding guys, broke away from MUFON, and his group is looking to do more scientific-oriented type UFO stuff. When I attended the conference, I was certainly have been encouraging of that sort of thing, to move away from the exploitation stuff, the Hollywood glitz and the package selling and, tables and alien masquerade contests and all that sort of stuff, all the stuff, the media stuff, so, that conference that Rich does there, I think is a good alternative. It's, nobody's selling anything. There's no media there. It's not about the press. It's people actually, conferring on the scientific value of the phenomena and figuring out, what we can do. Yeah. And you got Troy Taylor there too, and so good little spot for Eric Davis is there now, I think too. Who sort of a controversial figure within ufology. Worked on some of those secret Bigelow programs. So should be interesting. Yeah, Huntsville's a good little town.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now, you've been to quite a few UFO landing locations, I'm guessing, or even some UFO crash areas. What is the most interesting UFO encounter that you've had?
You mean like a personal encounter that I've had, or places that I've been to that are
places?
The most interesting?
Yeah, places
I can
that
both those if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, Yeah, when you go to a lot of these spots, you're going to experience, anomalous things. So I've at some of these spots, I've seen UFOs and lights and felt things. Uh, Photographic anomalies, video anomalies, all that sort of stuff. It's secondary evidence that is sort of subjective. Um, yeah, but a lot of these places. Hmm, I don't know.
Have you seen
Oh
UFOs
yeah,
at any of these
have I
places?
seen anything? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, some of the anomalous stuff. My background, like as I've said, I've always been in this sort of this subject area. But yeah, when you see something, which I have, I've saw a flying saucer, a traditional sort of disc, inverted saucers sort of put on top of each other. Um, and I've also seen a black triangle, uh, which was probably some kind of military thing. It looked like some sort of a stealth type aircraft, but it was perfectly triangular. So I don't know what it was, but I lean towards that as an explanation. So UFOs, yeah, I've seen a couple, and experienced some things in different locations, a couple of haunted houses, definitely.
So you're a UFO believer.
Oh, I definitely believe that there's, phenomena worthy of further study in certain locations, but, if you mean by believer, in extraterrestrials or aliens, I'm open to the idea, but, I would like to see the evidence of that. Um, I'm open to any interpretation. I think each case should be looked at on its own merits, and not sort of lumped together because some cases are stronger than others. Some uh, undoubtedly are probably hoaxed. Traditionally over reported cases, the bulk of things that people are reporting, anomalous, objects in the sky are misidentifications of a lot of different things. Astronomical, atmospheric, airplanes. And there's certainly a lot of secret projects out there, secret programs, things flying around. More so now. There's a lot of drones and balloons, Wi-Fi balloons and different things that are being experimented with right now. So every case is its own case, and there's not really anything conclusive as far as the extraterrestrial interpretation or ultra dimensional or whatever otherworldly beings, whatever they're from. Now there's a lot of tales. There's a lot of anecdotes, and some of them may be true. And I there are some cases that are absolutely intriguing, and I think that we should continue to look at and study. I'm open to really any interpretation, but I think that uh, a lot of the stuff can be explained, and we have to sort of whittle that stuff away, to get down to the really, interesting phenomenological cases. And what we're looking for is evidence ultimately. A good story is a good story, but ultimately we want some sort of physical trace evidence if possible, data evidence, instrumented evidence. So I encourage movements in that direction.
Yeah, there seems to, there's probably a lot of hoaxes as well.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of hoaxes. I mean, anybody who's studied the history, is well aware, that there's been a lot of misinformation, disinformation, con artists, outright lying or exaggerating of things, and urban legend, folklore. So you have to sort of whittle through that stuff. I'm as long as everything is looked through a critical thinking viewpoint and a rationalization, viewpoint, with the honest approach of trying to figure out, what it is, because there are debunkers out there that are skeptical, that will debunk something in order to keep it from being a challenge, but there's also, pro bunkers out there, hoaxers as well, that, promote fake evidence and promote false stories, and they reject any sort of critique of it or any sort of explanation that is mundane, but we got to get through, all that stuff to get to the good stories, and try to localize them and try to study them, I think, is the best way to get that data in order to further develop theories of, in some cases, I think some of this, may be solvable. There might be, some sort of environmental component. And, that's what interests me the most as well, especially as I'm traveling to pinpointed places, anomalous lands, localized anomalous hotspots, la lands, so I'm interested in seeing if there's any, why is a house haunted? Why does a certain spot attract creatures and Bigfoot and who knows what? Why is one area more prevalent than another in these stories?
Yeah, like, is it interdimensional, or is it actually in our realm, or?
Yeah, and those are theories, and a lot of people promote those as facts. There are people that believe the extraterrestrial hypothesis, certainly within the UFO community, but I would think amongst the younger people, it's it's like Valet and Keel with their interdimensional or even time traveling ultra-dimensional creatures coming from an elsewhere world, probably has more influence now, and therefore, the premise is that if there's dimensional beings, then there might be places that allow transfer. It's like Stranger Things. Maybe there's, for one reason or another, there's a certain place that the veil is thinner. So they look for vortexes, or they look for certain hotspots. But ultimately, we still need to get to, okay, how do we prove that, right? we got to get instrumentation there to show something phenomenological. Because if something is appearing materially from the immaterial, we need to know the causative mechanisms of that, or if it's an environmental thing that is inducing hallucinations, that would be a benefit to know. If it's an invisible trickster that won't allow us to study it, can skin, walker change shape or whatever, it's that's a little harder. But even if it is an interdimensional being, we're ultimately going to want to know where it's from, how it operates, how what it's comprised of, how it's able to manipulate things, what energies does it use. There's still all these questions that we need to take the next level of.
Yeah, it seems like we'd be able to get a lot more done.
In all the paranormal stuff.
It seems like we'd be able to get a lot more done if the researchers would actually get along with each other. It seems like,
yeah,
every time I turn around, they're fighting.
Well, everyone who's listening to this is probably familiar with paradrama. And I sort of intersect through a lot of different subcultures. The UFO community, Bigfooters, ghost hunters, cryptid folks. I go to all these conferences and events and stuff, and I interact with all of them. And they're pretty much three sides of the same coin. It's, you have an anomalous phenomena. People are amateurs trying to investigate it, trying to get more credibility for it because it's perceived through experience to them as being a legitimate external phenomenon worthy of study and that science should take seriously. And all UFOs, Bigfoot, all these, sort of have the same thing. And but yeah, we're dealing with a culture, cultures as well, and these cultures are comprised of people that watch stuff on TV, fans, maybe witnesses, and they carry their belief systems with them. And then you got, your traditional older people that have been investigating, stuff for years, and then you got your increasingly your professional class within all of these subcultures of people that make money from the publishing and the television production and the speaking circuit. It's traditional amongst all these UFOs to have those, but it's become more corporate, and it's more, a lot of that stuff is more devoted towards the media than it is towards pushing any sort of legitimate science. And as a result, you sort of get trapped into the storytelling stuff, and everything's over dramatized, everything's sensationalized. You're not getting honest investigations. There's some good people out there, but largely the exploitation stuff has created some problems, and it has certainly increased the class divisions and the camps within all these communities, because they're competing business interests. There are people competing for TV shows and lecture spots and all that. So you get these little camps, and then you have your camps of belief as well. People that for one reason or another they latch on, as a believer of something or different, or a skeptic of something, and you get these competing camps, and then personality issues come into play, certainly, especially when you get some people that are on career paths, where they're trying to be public faces so they can get on TV events or TV networks, which increases their speaking tour. And I don't begrudge that, because you're not making a whole lot of money. Some people do make a whole lot of money, but it's expensive to go to some of these conferences. So I understand the want to speak or whatever, but
do you think it's like a lot of this person's attacking this person because he's my competition to get this TV show?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make him look real bad.
There's the business side, and there's personal stuff. There's definitely personal stuff, and political beliefs now, certainly. Different views on different things. You can look at some of the paradrama. Some of it's legitimate. Some of it's just a competition thing or personal issues, egos or whatever. The recent MUFON meltdowns over the past couple years. With the John Ventry scandal and the Harzan scandal recently, and some of the issues that they've had, people do take it personally. Some people will circle the wagons, which is what MUFON has done. So it creates pro MUFON camps and anti MUFON, and I try to traverse all the camps as much as I can. I try to be, open and fair-minded and critically thinking on everything. I take everything case by case. But
seems like
I'm more of a reformer. I try to encourage people to, be civil and and have good debates and try to get towards, some rational answers and avoid some of the drama,
Yeah, it seems like we'd be able to get further along if we could debate things and debate ideas without, so much attack,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with communities and you're dealing with, a lot of different cultures too, and people from different areas of the country, you got rural people and city people, and people have competing views, and you're always going to have those sort of things. But first and foremost, you need to be able to be civil, and you need to be able to have an intelligent debate, and try to be open-minded to things. You can still respectfully have your disagreements, but do so respectfully. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know how to debate correctly, so that thus you get the easy social media fighting. It's easy to tweet something off without thinking about it. And there's a lot of people, some people with educated backgrounds, and there's also a lot of people that are experiencers that have continued on to be involved in the culture, maybe because there's definitely a social component. A lot of people want to be around other people that can have the same beliefs, and talk seriously about things, even if you disagree on things. You're still amongst your kind, so to speak. So yeah, I try to traverse all that. I try to be more reform minded and stay above all that stuff.
So the Exorcist House, we talked a little bit about this before we actually started recording. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that place? What kind of feeling did you have while you were there?
Well, yeah, for those folks that don't know, certainly people are familiar with The Exorcist, the movie, the book, the story. Um, that was based on some actual supposed events, and that took place in parts of them took place in a couple different locations in St. Louis back in, I think it was like 1940 or something like that. It was a boy, not a girl, and pretty much typical exorcist type stuff. I guess vomiting and swearing and demonic possession and things that a kid shouldn't be saying. I think he was a young boy, younger than 10.
So who owns the house today?
I don't know the owner.
Do you know if it? I mean, were you inside the house or?
I did not go inside the house. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
have not been inside.
I didn't know if
I
it
would
was
love to
a.
go inside. No, but I've been to the outside a couple times. Just to see where it's at and get some pictures. Um, I think a couple of ghost shows, maybe Ghost Adventures, did a ghost hunt inside. So it seemed pretty small. It's just some regular folks living there. It's not far from Ferguson, so you have that, and then there's like this wall on the other side of the road, and then you have all these wealthy homes. I guess it was maybe a gated community or manor or something there at one time. So you have the dichotomy between these two places in St. Louis, and it's a nice house. It's turn of the century, so it's a small little cottage type thing, and
I don't think I could live in a house like that.
yeah, it's possessed houses. I don't know. I've spent the night in a few haunted hotels and a few haunted uh, hospitals and things like that. But yeah, I haven't really slept in a haunted. That would be creepy.
Yeah. Now, You know how sometimes you get that like that horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach when you've been somewhere horrible. You know, like I think I talked about it on a show I did just a little bit ago about how the feeling in your gut when I was at the 9/11 memorial, places like that. What would you say would be the most gut wrenching place you've been to?
Well, I think when you visit haunted locations, they tend to have a story with them of death, right? So either somebody's been murdered there, or bodies have been stacked up there, or there's been some sort of burial mishap or whatever that spawns demonic or ghostly involvement. Yeah, it's haunted places. If you know the backstory and if you've gone into the details of say a murder and know exactly where the bodies were at a location or where the bodies were stacked up, it certainly psychologically put your mind into a certain set, because you can't really get, when you're in a morgue, laying down on a morgue slab, it's hard to not have that creepy feeling. That's a psychological thing. And it also depends on the environment, how creepy it does it look, how dark is it, are you alone? I was at the bottom of the Waverly Hills death chute, by myself, and knowing that thousands of bodies came through that spot was definitely, you get the chills running back, in your short hairs. But I think what you're probably talking about is like that sort of heavy feeling of dread and maybe a little bit of fear, maybe like you're some paranoia mixed in. Yeah, sometimes those things can irrationally arise. Sometimes you get the little panic thing. If there's too much darkness behind you. Is that environmental? Is that psychological? I think maybe the reason some of these places are phenomenological is maybe there's something there environmentally that increases, our fear. Some people may even think that there's some sort of entity there that can traverse dimensions and influence those things, worthy of study, worthy of looking at. I say the creepier something is, I think is, maybe it's a clue, sort of a biofeedback clue of, a phenomenological location, a mysterious spot, and if we can localize these, we can study them. Certainly, places are different when the lights are on.
Is there one place that sticks out above all the others?
Hmm. Well, not really.
No.
Maybe being in some of the spots where the Murfreesboro Mud Monster was seen over in Murfreesboro, Illinois, going out into the woods, when you're retracing a Bigfoot, type thing, or Momo the Missouri Monster. I've been to all the places where he's been and been spotted, both these creatures, and sometimes you have to go back into wooded areas, and that's when it gets creepy. That's
so I've never heard of Momo the Missouri Monster. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Louisiana, Missouri's north of St. Louis on the Mississippi, a couple of hours north of St. Louis, and small little town. Back in '72, started seeing a hairy hominid, a bipedal Bigfoot-like creature, a little different than Bigfoot. Supposedly had 3 toes and glowing orange eyes, and maybe a little bit shorter, not as heavy, matted hair, and people were seeing it, reporting it, getting tracks of it. Monster hunters, UFO hunters, all kinds of people came up and looked into it. It became a craze for 72, 73, all throughout that period. The town went nuts, and Momo, which means Missouri Monster, Momo became a thing, and you got reported on in, tabloids and newspapers and all that. And people are looking back at that case because it's interesting lore, and certainly you can see the effects on a small town and how stories can go and be spread. And ultimately, it's still unsolved. I mean, some people lean towards a hoax, but it's still largely unsolved. So, but when you go back into woods, the Bigfoot stuff is pretty scary. I think more so than haunted houses. But for me, anyway, UFO spots just fascinate me. They don't really. I'm not afraid of those.
Do you think that Bigfoot is to blame for a lot of the missing cases of people?
No, I don't. I've followed some of the Dave Paulides 411 stuff.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's interesting. I think some of those cases might be unusual in nature, but I think. We're dealing with forests. We're dealing with woods. I hike a lot, and I've traveled to a lot of wooded places and going on a couple day long hikes. So it's dangerous. Some of these places are dangerous, and a lot of the people that are missing are people in their 70s or small kids. So and there are hazards. There's animals, predators. And there's also, crazy killers and kidnappers, and there's I think a lot of explanations. Mostly just getting lost or injured. I think for a lot of those, but
So
some places certainly, when you have a lot of them, you definitely want to see if there's some connection.
You don't think Bigfoot's out there kidnapping people and cooking them up?
Well, from talking to my Squatcher friends, I don't think Bigfoot is that type of creature. I've never met a Bigfoot. I might have seen something peeking through my grandfather's window in Hillsborough, Missouri, back in the 70s. But it could have been a bear as well. It was just sort of dark, and I saw the eyes peering in through, a high window. It would have had to have been on its hind legs. But who knows? I think out of all the mysteries out there, there's probably more evidence for Bigfoot than there is anything else. There's, in ghost hunting, it's videos and pictures. There's nobody's got a ghost in a bottle. UFOs, it's pretty much videos and pictures and, maybe some metamaterial, and that the tests always come back inconclusive. But, Bigfoot, tends to have actually more physical evidence as far as, footprints with ridges and prints and, certain bone structures that denote weight and hair and, different sort of things. I'm open to that. I think I'm curious as to how something could exist with and have a population that could reproduce. Especially in our modern age where everything's contracting. How many occupy a certain area in Ohio or Missouri or Pacific Northwest, or are they all being pushed up to Canada due to urban sprawl? I mean, are we going to be seeing them more because of sprawl? All these things are fascinating. I think most likely, though, out of all the strange stuff that one may investigate, I think probably sea creatures is probably the most likely out of any of them, because we have barely scratched exploring the oceans, and certainly there's some monsters down there that we can still discover. And yeah, science is not done. Science can still discover things. It can discover things associated with UFOs. There might be natural phenomena, ghosts. There may be, maybe there's some sort of phenomena there, something to do with electromagnetic fields. Maybe there is a thinning of the veil, that we can somehow explore.
Have you ever seen a ghost or a shadow person or?
I have photographed shadow people. I have photographed, countless orbs and mists. I've been in places where, things have brushed up against me, or a door being pulled, from one direction that I'm pulling it. Little small things. I could probably share, a couple of pictures or whatever, but it's going to be, anomalous.
Yeah.
Nothing that really has slapped me in the face. And I've been in places, I'm not like on the TV show, yelling at the ghost to try to bait them, because I'm sure that's, I don't know how effective that is, but certainly some sort of experience, is desired and appreciated. Sometimes it happens, but it's always sort of subjective. I haven't seen a full body apparition or talked to somebody who's vanished. It's usually been noises and little things and photographic anomalies. My most interesting experience, though, was at Waverly Hills a few years back, up on the 5th floor. And there's a room that is at the center of the hall. I think it's 502 or 512. I'll have to look that up. But the story is that a nurse that had worked there at one time got pregnant or was impregnated by a doctor, and the times meant that she was a scorned woman and disrespected and all that. So maybe her love wasn't requited, who knows. But she commits suicide and by hanging herself from one of the pipes above the showers, the bathroom section. And her body was found, and she died, when she was pregnant, and it became a scandal that was hushed up. And but the story persists. Some people have done research to try to determine which nurse, and some think they've figured in on it or whatever. But for story purposes, that's what is at that location. And when I was there doing an overnight research study, there were some other teams there, and the team I was going with had one of those FLIR Connect sensors, where it can read like temperature variations.
Yeah.
But it also had the Connect where it could read in stick figure form, approximate based upon temperature, deviations. It can create a stick figure. And I thought that was interesting, because I go to these things to observe the techniques also of other investigators. If I go to a ghost hunt or, sky watch or whatever, I investigate the scientific techniques to see if there are things of interest, or some stuff that can be rejected, and you'll find all that. You'll find, people with crystals doing seances all the way to, people shooting laser beams around all over the place, at mirrors and doing all sorts of infrared type stuff. But these guys were doing that, and they were filming this room, and a Kinect figure came up as if it was taking a shower in one of the stalls. The arms were up, cleaning under the armpits and cleaning the back and all that. It moved in the motion of somebody being in the shower, making movements of a shower, of taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's certainly explanations that can be offered for that. But just the correlative impact of behavior being represented, within that area, it was shower behavior being exhibited on a machine, based upon the data that it's receiving. So that's fascinating. It's interesting, how that would occur. It goes beyond coincidence when a phenomena is exhibiting, the behavior that is prevalent. That's all I'm to say. And then they had one of their co-researchers go into the space next to the shower stall, and he shows up on the, I'm behind the camera watching this, and their video camera watching the screen, and the guy goes and occupies the space, and one of the guys calls out to the perceived entity that's taking a shower to reach out and touch, the person that's next to them. And then no sooner said than done, and the stick figure arm comes out, and this guy's on the other side of the screen, so he's not able to see when this arm's coming out at him, the stick figure arm, but he reacts at precisely the moment that the stick figure arm touched him. And he said he felt a cold spot, like at that instantaneous motion, at that instantaneous moment, and then, he left the space, it went back to showering, and then it disappeared, and then it reappeared, the stick figure, hanging from the top of the ceiling, as if it was, hung, lifeless.
Oh, wow.
Now, what that is, what that means, I watched this real time. There was nobody manipulating it because I'm standing right behind the screen. What that means is, evidence of something anomalous. If it's psychic projection, how does that work? We still need to figure that out. If there's a consciousness there, how is it interacting? How is it materializing? How is it able to manipulate? And how does it hear? How does a ghost see? What is its energy lattice, its matrix? How is it able to interact with the material? All these questions need to be asked, and in order to verify that there's a phenomena, if there is something, it's going to react with the physical world. And it should be demonstrable, But then you get, with paranormal research, and I found this with Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, whatever, when you go to these locations, you also tend to get a lot of these types of coincidences. Some people have called them synchronicities. We know the whole synchronicity, think of a plate of shrimp and then somebody says shrimp, or read a book and it says shrimp. Right at that moment, somebody on TV says shrimp, just the timing of things, the coincidence of things. Some of this goes beyond that, the likelihood of like I said, the shower behavior being exhibited, other than it being some sort of a hoax, that's curious. But that's not the conclusion of ghosts. That's the beginning of your investigation. It's the beginning of trying to gather more evidence and more data, and trying to figure out how
Yeah. So I guess before we wrap up, what would be your kids for people that are taking kids out on their trips? What would be the top three places that your kids enjoyed going to?
Oh, well, my kids probably enjoyed going down to Gulf Breeze, Florida, the most. Famous Gulf Breeze UFO Ed Walters encounter locations, as well as mass UFO sightings. Um, it's Pensacola Beach, and yet the Pensacola Naval Air Station there. So we probably enjoyed that trip quite a bit. Alligator farms near there. Got to see the Pascagoula encounter location, the famous Calvin Parker Charles Dixon
Yeah.
encounter from 1973. Um, Also, not too far from there is where they filmed a lot of Close Encounters locations down in Mobile. So that whole area and trip was pretty cool. We got to see the Close Encounters, all the houses, and the road where the truck gets visited in Close Encounters. I got to park my car there. You know, um, a lot of cool things. The kids we take to museums and do all that stuff. That they like going to Huntsville because we get to do space camp stuff and going to Chicago. Chicago's always fun. Visit all the museums and stuff up there while I'm also visiting haunted cemeteries and haunted houses and all that.
Yeah, there's probably a lot that goes on up in Chicago with haunted cemeteries and stuff. A lot of old mobsters and
Oh,
things.
yep, yeah. Houses all throughout Chicago. A lot of the mobster stuff. Joliet, the prison is haunted in Joliet, and of course you got some UFO encounter locations near there as well. There's always something to find. Always something to explore.
So, what's the best advice you could give to parents who are thinking of taking their kids on road trips? Just in general.
Well, it depends on how old the kid is and how long you're driving. Usually about 4 hours works for us before we have to check into a hotel. So, we visit a lot of towns here in the Midwest and throughout the South. We'll see about investing in an RV and then heading out west and going to places like Roswell and Area 51 here in the next few years. So I encourage people just to, if you're into road trips, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people don't like driving. But if you're into road tripping, and visiting off the road locations, yeah, if you're interested in the paranormal stuff, just along your route, see what the town has to offer. Type in ghost or UFO on your Google thing, and you can usually find if there's some story connected. Some of these places are really photographic. Some of these places are getting lost. The towns are getting smaller. Some towns are dying. Not too far from me is Commerce, Missouri. They have tons of ghost stories. A haunted boy on the road that waves to you. And you look in your rearview mirror, he disappears. The abandoned school that second floor glows green. Or the road right behind Commerce that has a giant albino hairy dog that runs wild. Little towns like this, they all have their cool stories. Their crybaby bridges, their spook light roads, haunted cemeteries, haunted houses. Commerce is down to just single digits, just a few families. So I deliberately go out of my way to try to hit some of these smaller places to try to document, and before some of these stories disappear. So I go off the beaten path, and I encourage other people, if they're willing to do that, and Get
Yeah,
some good photos, get some good videos, and share them with people. Give it away for free.
yeah. Do the
So that's
back road traveling, right? Don't
oh yeah,
just
and there's a few people out there doing that. Backroads lore and uh, some of those people have been doing that for years. Just documenting everything, and yeah, it's good to do.
all right. So where can everybody find you?
You can find me pretty much on all social media. I'm on Facebook a lot. I do a lot of blogs and blog posting on Instagram. I got a WordPress page, but that needs to be sorely updated, and I'm working on that here soon. Collecting a lot of these blogs and photos and some other stuff into some books for early next year. I'm looking to do some Kickstarter stuff um, to help fund some trips and to maintain my integrity. I really don't want to get into that whole professional, publishing thing if I don't have to. I like my freelance writing, working for myself, and
Yeah, sometimes it's always best to stay freelancing. Sure.
yeah, I don't want to work for anybody else. I just want to, go on trips and share them with people, and uh, yeah, but we'll be organizing some of that stuff, to try to uh, take further trips. And now that I'm doing this full time here now. My wife luckily got a promotion, and we can afford to do it now. So yeah, going to be doing as soon as the Corona stuff is over with. Certainly, that put a nip in a lot of traveling. But we've been doing some out of state traveling here recently.
It
So
sure has. It makes it, you're scared to even go to your local grocery store, let alone, take a road trip somewhere.
yeah, ain't that right?
So, all right, Michael Huntington, we certainly appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us today. And I hope people reach out and read some of your posts and your blogs. And, if they have any questions, they can ask you. And we'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. And welcome back to Conflict Radio. Be sure to check out our website, www.conflictradio.net. And be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also find us on all the normal podcast catchers, including Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and iHeartRadio podcasts. Well, that'll do it for this week. Be sure to catch us on Thursday. We'll be having Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio join us. I look forward to talking to him about some things, and that promises to be an interesting show. So until next time, batten down the hatches and be